Hello, I'm Doug Walker.
And I'm not.
And this is Sibling Rivalry. Thanks, Not.
You're welcome.
You cannot kill fear, Jack. I'm not afraid of you. We stand together.
Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, the Sandman, and Jack
All walk
Frost
into a bar.
and are packing heat. This is pretty much the setup for Rise of the Guardians. What would happen if you gave your favorite holiday characters weapons, essentially? And while you might think, that's a pretty fucking stupid idea, or the most awesome idea you've ever heard,
Or a little bit of each.
yeah, that's essentially what we get. We get a film that is clunky, kind of clumsy, but at the same time is visually interesting and unbelievably creative. The setup is pretty much that Jack Frost, played by Justin Bieber, as you can see,
Albino Justin Bieber at that, in a hoodie.
is the new Guardian that's going to be brought on to fight the Boogeyman with Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and so forth.
They basically play a sort of a holiday version of the Expendables, hired by the Moon to kick ass.
Oh, that's right, the Moon.
Yes, they've incorporated Sailor Moon into it somehow. In the name of the Moon, they will punish the Boogeyman.
Yeah, the moon is essentially Charlie, who doesn't talk. In fact, the Sandman doesn't talk either, so there's a lot of not talking and too much talking at times. So, let's just get down to exactly... Let's talk about the pros of this movie, like just the really good stuff. I thought visually this movie was unbelievable.
It's incredibly imaginative, which is not something I was expecting by the marketing. This is another horribly marketed film that looked terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I walked into it wanting to see Lincoln, but Numbnuts here saw it already. He's like, no, we're going to review Rise of the Guardians. And I had no intention of going. I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it for the review. But I was pleasantly surprised. And the thing that surprised me the most was the layout design. I'm an animation junkie, so the backgrounds, the layout design.
The animation is all just itself, the textures. Unbelievable.
The textures were incredible. The imagination behind the different lands. I like to think of this as sort of the Nightmare Before Christmas. If you got to see all of the holiday towns instead of just Christmas Town, you get to see the Tooth Fairy's kingdom, which is really interesting. I never thought I would say that. The Tooth Fairy's Kingdom is probably one of the more interesting ones in the movie. It looks like something like cross between Final Fantasy and Rainbow Bright.
Yeah, and like Skyrim
and Avatar.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, and all the worlds sort of have their own unique... I mean, they're all pretty massive, and I think for lack of a better description, they look like something kind of out of a modern-day video game, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, they look really pretty, and they look really
and they were
awesome.
all given unique identities, which was nice, even including the Boogeyman's like Escher kingdom with all the stairs and the hanging sort of, you know.
Well, with that said, let's actually talk about the characters themselves, the actual Guardians, because as this movie was starting off, or as we saw the trailer, I'm going, ah, jeez, this is going to be really lame and really awkward, and at times it was. But part of the fun was the interaction off of these characters, and again, the design of these characters. Who the fuck would design the Tooth Fairy like that? That is an original Tooth Fairy.
That was the best design in the whole movie. It took me a while to catch on what they were doing, because she looks kind of like a cross between a parrot and a hummingbird with the face of Julia Louis-Dreyfus for some reason. And I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, what the hell is this? In no book I've ever seen has the Tooth Fairy ever been a hummingbird. And then over time,
and you know about Tooth Fairy lore.
I do. I am an
goddammit
expert. I wrote the Wikipedia article on it. Just so you know, straight and married. But no, it's no, it was really interesting, and I finally figured out. I was like, okay, so you're doing the fairy thing, but you have to find a way around it. And hummingbirds, they collect the teeth. And I was like, okay, so we have all of these little hummingbirds collecting teeth for the queen hummingbird and her giant hive, and this would almost be a horror movie, actually, if you just kind of twisted it a bit, but...
And I think the biggest shock for both of us... Who's your favorite character in the movie? It's probably mine, too.
I have two favorite characters, actually. Honestly, I would go with the Tooth Fairy, mostly because I think she had the most humanity, and was the most imaginative, you know, from the ground up. That one was reinvented totally. I would say second, Santa Claus!
Yes, Santa Claus!
The
The
Claus.
Santa Claus in this
Burly
movie
Russian Santa Claus.
he's so enjoyable. Did you guess that was Alec Baldwin?
Eric Baldwin!
I totally did not guess that was Alec
No.
Baldwin. You cannot recognize him in
No,
this.
my wife and I watched the film and we turned to each other and we were like, Alec Baldwin? And that's straight out of...
everyone in the audience just
Straight,
like,
yeah, straight out of Team America. He's like, Eric Baldwin! Great performance. That is not somebody I would ever associate with Santa Claus. Nor would I ever associate him with anything good and decent in this world.
But sure enough, he really comes through as this really deranged but enjoyably energized Santa Claus. I think that's probably one of the things that's really good about it. It's enjoyably energized every second. Now, did you see it in 3D?
No, I did not see it in
The 3D
3D.
is very
I hate
good.
3D.
The 3D is very good in this movie. I think DreamWorks is one of the few people that actually really know how to do. I don't know what they do, but they have the 3D technology.
They did
down.
master it with How to Train Your Dragon, so...
Yeah, and this was just as good in my opinion. I mean, the cameras are constantly flying, constantly spinning around, constantly going through, and you feel like you're flying half the time in these scenes.
They were well put together action sequences, and they found interesting ways to get around the fact, because this always bothers me about kids' films, where it always comes down to, oh, you need to believe, and if only we could understand each other, and good, and this and that. It always comes down to extreme violence by the end of the movie. It was like always a mixed moral, but they found a way around it by basically making the terrifying characters sort of nightmares, these sort of dreamlike things. So Sandman's like whipping these things, and Santa Claus is kicking ass, and the Easter Bunny is played by Hugh Jackman, and is kind of like a cross between Crocodile Dundee and Chuck Norris as a jackrabbit. I don't know, but... And it works because I'm just like, okay, well, they're imaginary. You can be extremely violent. So I got my taste for bloodlust, and I didn't feel guilty that we were corrupting the youth of America.
But the funny thing is that the most enjoyable, the action scenes are fun, but the most enjoyable scene for me in the entire film was a scene where all of them have to go, because the Tooth Fairy's losing her powers, they all have to get the teeth. And that was the most enjoyable scene, because they're just jumping on top of the rooftops and they're having a competition for who can get the most the fastest. And it's really energizing. You see them working off each other, and they're very likable, and they're enjoying it while they're doing it.
And I will say this is a problem. This is both a pro and con with the movie, is it borrows a lot from other films. That scene was straight out of Nightmare Before Christmas. I was like, oh, it's like Jack Skellington taking over another holiday, and they all suck at it. You know, well, they're good to varying degrees, but they're beating the snot out of each other trying to grab all these teeth. Again, sounds like a horror movie.
The problems, because I think we can both agree that there's some problems with the movie. The major one for me was the pacing, because even though there's a lot of scenes that are a lot of fun, and you do like seeing these characters interact off each other, I'm constantly saying to myself, wow, this movie doesn't slow down much. It's kind of like, well, we have to go over here and do this. Oh, okay, now they're zipping around. The camera's going to zoom over here and go down, 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 down. Well, okay, that was nice. What are we going to do now? Well, we're going to go over here. Okay, the camera's going to zoom down and do this and blah, blah, blah. It didn't seem to have many slow movements. Like, for example, when the boogeyman introduces himself, there's no big introduction. He just comes out and says, I'm the boogeyman. That's it, essentially.
What do you want him to do? Tap dance?
Well, no, I want build-up.
I thought the pacing was fine.
No, I want build-up. I want
with rare
suspense.
exception, I didn't think there was really a dull moment in the movie where I'm just like, you know...
Well, but I mean, I guess to me, like, for the real emotional moments, and there are a few, and they work out okay, but I guess, like, you were saying
okay, Jack Frost's backstory, like...
No, but okay, that's a perfect example. That's a good setup, and without giving it away, it's a good setup for his backstory. But at the same time, you have the music going. His voice is a little... I don't know if that was the right voice for him. I
will agree with you on this, because you're wrong about the pacing. But I will agree with you on this. Chris Pine and Jude Law, horribly miscast. Unbelievably miscast, and it's not their fault.
Yeah,
it's
like
honestly,
they do fine, it's just he needed
No, the fault is not, and I'm not even saying the fault is in the voice, the fault is in the character design. And I'm going to rant about this for a second, because this movie is so imaginative that when it fails in the imagination department, it's so much more obvious because everything around it is so good. And the secondary characters are all great. The backgrounds are spectacular. Humans not animated well. I thought that was very strange. And some of the animation's weird. Santa Claus's beard looks like it's made out of frosting. It has no sense of texture. But your main characters... Okay, so who are your main characters going to be? Because the others are side characters. You're basically going Jack Frost and the villain, Jude Law. This is your central setup. boring.
They're both very boring.
Horribly boring. First off, the villain has no backstory. I kept waiting for it, like, well, there's gonna be something. No, I'm just sick of not being believed.
I just wanted to be a dick and the moon got mad. What the hell? Now everyone's gonna die. It doesn't add
no
up.
backstory, and in the case of Jack Frost, it's just a miscalculation in character design. Albino Justin Bieber in his hoodie does not...
He has a hoodie, guys.
It's like one of these things is not like the other, and I know what they're trying to do. It's DreamWorks attempt. It's like, we gotta be hip. What's in it now? Justin Bieber. He's gonna get
with
white
the
hair.
staff and the powers, and
He's gonna be mischievous. He's gonna be like he's snowboarding on ice.
No, but I like the idea of making him mischievous. I like the idea of giving him the
fine,
idea.
but
That's
the way
great, but they didn't.
sucked.
Yeah, they tried to make him a little too modern. Not painfully so. I mean, it's not like, Disney trying to be modern or anything like that.
I'm gonna say
but it's noticeable.
That was my other problem with the movie is, for all of the, like, ooh, Santa's sleigh has, like, rockets attached, and for the way they tried to modernize, making, the toys and getting them out there, and the globe with all of the little twinkling lights and the computer stuff, did you really need any of that?
The globes are pretty cool. No, well, here,
It's a globe. It looked like a bad James Bond set.
No, I'll give it... Well, no, I was talking about the globe that were like the portals. See, anything that went sort of supernatural, I was
magic.
for.
That's
the magic stuff. They didn't have
attempt
too
to
much
modernize.
technical stuff. They didn't have too much technical stuff.
They did here and there, and it's just like
I agree, it wasn't
Bieber.
necessary.
It's one of these things is not like the
It
other.
did not match. It did not fit. I will agree that those didn't quite go together. I don't think that was as distracting as other elements, but I think for me, it's that
it makes the film confused.
You did give
when
Jack
it was
Frost
close to being really great and having a clear
this could
sense
have
of
been
direction.
a great film. And I think when you have a character like Jack Frost, who is actually pretty well set up, they give him a good backstory, they give him a good purpose and a good longing and stuff like that. I think just the voice doesn't quite come through. Again, not his fault. It's just the wrong choice. And for me, I think there's just not enough. I didn't feel his connection in there with the other Guardians, which, I mean, perhaps was the point as well. I mean, he's supposed to be a little bit of the outcast.
Yeah, I never got it. See, that's the problem. They were setting that up. You're just a troublemaker, you know. Which, again, seeing Santa Claus kind of be a bastard.
Yeah, swinging around the swords and stuff. I am not the troublemaker, now die!
This is the most twisted Santa I've seen since, Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe, where, Father Christmas...
I was gonna say, it reminded me of that.
An Uzi for Lucy, and a scimitar for Peter.
This is the only Santa we've seen that actually carries weapons around.
Still one step below the robot Santa Claus from Futurama, though, so... But, yeah, he just had... I never got this sense of connection, even at the end where everything wraps up in a nice package. And to the film's credit, it comes up with an ingenious way to take out your villain without having to be, like, literally kill your villain. Because I was like, if Santa Claus kills somebody in this movie, I think we may have a problem. I'm all for, a dark Christmas. I'm like, this is a kid's film. I may have to kind of, like, go, wait a second.
No, yeah, the resolution for how he, I mean, without giving away, how he is taken care of is actually very smart. And it's kind of self-destructive, too, which I like.
I think that's a much better, it's a much more adult observation about villains in general. There was something about karma in that film, and that's one of the things I liked about this movie is, for all of its whiz-bang action and all this, it was a strangely adult film. Like, it could have been more adult, maybe.
But here's my other thing. At the very end, what would you say the ultimate lesson is? Or lessons?
Don't skate on thin ice.
I mean, well, but that sort of thing, at the end, it seems like, and they're all good lessons, and they're all adult lessons, but it seems like they're throwing 5 or 6 lessons at you. And maybe that was part of my problem.
Well,
is that sometimes
it's Justin Bieber. Maybe he needs a lot of lessons.
But that's what I'm saying, that it seems like maybe a little too much was being thrown at you, and you did... Like, here's my thought on this movie, and this is what I think could have made this a great movie. Why did you need a villain? Couldn't you have just made it that Jack Frost is going to be one of the new Guardians, one of the new people, and
I
just
had the
talk about
opposite
the
impression.
process?
I looked at it as, why did you need Jack Frost?
I mean,
and
okay,
I will
let me
say
put it
this,
this
it wasn't
way.
until his backstory that I'm like, I get it now, but it did take its time there.
But one of those things, it seems like 2 movies are trying to happen. One that's really magical, really imaginative, and one that's essentially an action film. And they don't always mesh. Sometimes they do. I mean, they mesh really well.
Right.
It's very imaginative.
That is a problem. But I will take a film with good action and 5 or 6 morals that are decently told enough over Cars 2 any day.
Yes. I mean,
I'm sorry. Like, I think we're at a time in America where we can start judging animated films honestly,
Cars
and
2.
I think
just by Cars 2.
No, well, that too. But I think we can look at these things and say, you know what? I'll take something that's ambitious and is trying a lot of things over pure, fluff. Like, I look at Cars 2, I'll even go, what was the moral of Monsters, Inc.? Boo.
Laugh.
Yeah, I mean,
Not try. Laugh.
It's the same thing. And honestly, I'm gonna say I enjoyed this movie more than a movie like Cars 2 or Monsters, Inc.
No, not Cars 2. You take that back. That's an American movie classic.
I said it.
You heard it right
with it,
here.
Internet.
Send angry emails. Cartoon.
Oh, I'm gonna get the emails for Monsters, Inc. because there's like, but the baby was so cute, but there was nothing happening. It's baby's day
I'd be
out
fascinated to
with
see like the
Monsters.
Cars 2 club come out and be like, hey, we represent Cars 2. You leave that movie alone, because I've yet to see someone who likes that movie. What if we
Michael
find
Caine
that
as
group?
a cop was brilliant. Michael Caine's gonna
Michael
he's
Caine.
gonna be the-
Michael
Caine.
Caine. Okay, so we should probably wrap this review up. I think we can both sort of agree it's a good movie. It could have been great, but
I give it one thumb.
yeah, just
I give it a jab in the eye. No, it's like if this is pure average, like this sucks, average, thumbs up, then
leaning towards the
10 o'clock, maybe 10:30. Like
I'd say the stuff that was, especially in 3D again, the stuff that was imaginative and creative and visually interesting was unbelievable. The animation is unbelievable. And I think that alone is worth seeing the movie. But if that doesn't sway you, you might have a harder time getting into it.
well, and there's a couple things to keep in mind. One, I think the action is fine. I love Roger Ebert. We did a tribute to him, but he was going on. He's like, I don't think this is the movie for me. I think this movie is meant for 4-year-olds who like action sequences. Roger. You gave 3.5 stars to The Phantom Menace and has a 40-minute pod race in the middle. You can lighten up a bit. Like, it's the action's fine. It's fun. I think it's better paced than anything in The Phantom Menace.
Well, I think we should point out too, it's not like it's action-packed. I wouldn't say it's necessarily violent. Necessarily, like
no,
when you really think about
it's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, like it's not like there's a lot of punching or hitting or people getting stabbed or anything like that. It's very much just people dodging things and moving out of the way and maybe beams of light hitting somebody.
The other thing is, anybody seeing this movie, the other thing you have to remember is this is a first-time director.
I was impressed for a first-time director.
This is an African-American director, college dropout, storyboard artist, unsung heroes of Hollywood. Storyboard artists. These are the guys that really, in some sense, make your movie happen because they're drawing the visual representation that's going to be filmed. And he rose up through the ranks of DreamWorks. This is his first film. It's a good first film. For a first try, I mean, I even look at things like, Brad Bird and The Iron Giant, and you can even look at the original Toy Story, and you can still find flaws. So I'm not saying this is necessarily quite in the same ranks as Toy Story or Iron Giant, but it's in the upper echelons of, for a first try, really
it's pretty
solid film. So kudos to him.
Yeah, I mean, technically and in terms of imagination, it's really up there. So, I think that's all we have to say about this film. I'm better than you, and we shall see you next time.
You suck.
You suck.